West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're learning new details about the plea deal reached between the Department of Justice prosecutors and Hunter Biden. President Biden's son will plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and avoid prosecution on a separate felony gun possession charge, allowing him to avoid any prison time. 2 sources familiar with the agreement tell NBC News the deal includes a provision in which the U.S. attorney has agreed to recommend probation for the tax violations. Legal experts say the federal gun charge is a rarely used statute that makes it illegal for someone addicted to drugs to possess a weapon. This is the first time the Justice Department has brought charges against a child of a sitting president. The charges against Hunter Biden are the result of a 5-year investigation by federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and IRS officials. The investigation was led by the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss,
who was he appointed by?
He was appointed by former President Donald Trump.
Wait, most U.S. attorneys are moved on after a new president comes in office. Are you saying that Joe Biden kept this Trump appointee?
Yes,
in Delaware?
This man was appointed by Donald Trump and then permitted by President Biden to remain in office.
That's highly unusual,
in order to continue the probe.
Highly unusual.
Talk about full transparency. An attorney for Hunter Biden issued a statement to NBC News, reading in part, quote, "With the announcement of 2 agreements between my client, Hunter Biden, and the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Delaware, it is my understanding that the 5-year investigation into Hunter is resolved." However, Weiss's office stated yesterday that the investigation is ongoing.
So now, but before we continue, John Heilman, and before we hear the total stupidity by Republicans just lying through their teeth about crimes in the Biden crime family, most legal experts I talk to here actually have a very dialectical response to this, and a very dialectical analysis. They say if his last name were not Biden, these charges would have never been brought. That said,
at the same time, if his last name was not Biden, the plea deal would not have been as generous. And by the way, this is the same plea deal they basically offered Hunter, or that Hunter's people offered the feds 18 months ago, and based on my reporting. And so it's very interesting. Feds wouldn't have brought this charge against somebody whose last name was not Biden. At the same time, a lot of legal analysts think the feds' deal may have been more generous because his last name was Biden.
It's an analysis I've heard, Joe, and God knows there are moments when often we, over the course of the last few years, have since Donald Trump came into office, and subsequently we've all, those of us who are not lawyers, say even simple country lawyers like yourself, have had to pretend to be lawyers or do legal analysis. This is one where I've heard a wide variety of things from a wide variety of lawyers. There's obviously a whole, in the non-ideological bar, people have difference of opinion about the nature of this plea deal. It's certainly the case. The first part of that dialectical is something that one hears all the time, which is that in no aspect of this case was likely to have been brought, or let alone pursued to this
Right.
degree, if it weren't for the fact that Hunter Biden was named Biden. And again, I think it can't be said enough times when you listen to people like Kevin McCarthy and others talking about the two-tier system of justice and the double standard. You just want to say
Double standard.
Here's this Trump-appointed prosecutor who was kept in office by Joe Biden, something that Donald Trump would never have done in the similar circumstance.
Never.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine an
Never.
Obama-appointed prosecutor looking into one of the Trump kids if Trump won the presidency and Trump saying, you know what? For both matters of both substance and perception, I'm going to leave this Obama-appointed prosecutor in to look at Don Jr. Because I just want to make sure that everyone has full faith in the legal system and it not being politicized. It's like a hallucinatory fantasy that could ever happen, and yet that's what Joe Biden did. And now all of these same Republicans who want to take this up, who want to figure out some way to pivot away from Donald Trump's legal woes, they focus on this and say, "Oh my God, two-tier standard of justice. He got a sweetheart deal," and you're like, guys. I mean, you just sound like morons when you say these things. You can say a lot of things about this, but not that.
Add to that, Heilman, just putting it out there, Ivanka and Jared worked in the White House. They worked for Donald Trump. Billions have come in from Saudi. There's so many questions. We're going to talk about kids. Do we even want to talk about kids?
You know, the thing is, if these same Republicans
and Hunter Biden did something wrong,
had been complaining when Ivanka got, I think it was trademarks in China. She got licenses in China to sell. She
traveled around the country campaigning.
When she got
it's true.
Okay, let me finish the sentence.
Okay.
She got licenses in China.
I know.
To sell her goods around the same time Donald Trump was meeting with President Xi. And Jared, a guy I've communicated with an awful lot, $2 billion from the Saudis. $2 billion. And again, I mean, it's a lot of money. We haven't said much about it here. A lot of money. And I'm just saying, if Republicans are going to say this about Hunter Biden, then where's the other side of this when they start talking about illegal influence peddling? Because Sam Stein, well, first, here's how Republicans humiliated themselves yesterday.
They were very angry at the plea, calling this a, quote, sweetheart deal from the Justice Department. That includes House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who was pressed by a reporter on the fact that it was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who made the charging decision. Take a listen.
It continues to show the two-tier system in America. If you are the president's leading political opponent, the DOJ tries to literally put you in jail and give you prison time. If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal.
Mr. Speaker, this is a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney that was held over into this administration. Why won't you accept
It's done.
This is a thorough investigation and to just accept it on its merits, given the person who investigated it?
It was a thorough investigation.
Why would you accept it? I'm asking you.
What I'm asking you, so you believe it's a thorough investigation?
I'm asking you.
He can't. Of course, he can't answer this question. Earlier this month, that attorney David Weiss sent a letter to Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. In it, Weiss wrote that he'd been granted, quote, granted ultimate authority over the Hunter Biden case by Attorney General Merrick Garland. That included, as Weiss put it, responsibility for deciding when, where, and whether to file charges against the president's son. So Sam Stein, again, for people that don't understand this, don't understand how it works, as John said, it is remarkable that Joe Biden allowed this guy to hold over something Donald Trump would never do. It's also remarkable. I mean, Tim Scott saying in front of that audience that Lady Justice must be blindfolded. And I'm sitting there thinking, we must treat people the same. These are the same people that overwhelmingly support Donald Trump being able to steal nuclear secrets and want to defund the FBI because the FBI went to retrieve some of the most important, sensitive, classified documents the U.S. government has. And they're lecturing, Tim Scott is lecturing us, lecturing the 85% of Americans who think Donald Trump should even run for office because he stole nuclear secrets?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's helpful to understand where the Republicans are coming from, but to understand what they've been saying about Hunter Biden and what they've been investigating about Hunter Biden, because they're conflating a couple things here. For about a year and a half now, Republicans on the Hill have been insisting that Hunter Biden's private business dealings were secretly an attempt for him to enrich his father. Now, Hunter Biden was not investigated by David Weiss for those business dealings. He was investigated for tax avoidance and the illegal owning of a firearm. And for those allegations, he was, he pled guilty in what I think ostensibly, if you ask any legal expert, was a fair resolution to that case. But House Republicans aren't talking about that. They're talking about an entirely different set of issues that they want to conflate into one big scandal. So that's why you have Kevin McCarthy and others coming out saying, how could they let him off? Well, they let him off because the crimes that they were looking at, the allegations they were looking into, were not what the Republicans wanted to look into. I think the bigger issue, though, here is you have a situation in which congressional Republicans are saying we need justice, blind justice. There cannot be a two-tiered system. And you have leading presidential candidates, Donald Trump and now Tim Scott, and to a degree, Ron DeSantis, taking a stance that says the executive branch oversees the Justice Department and therefore can instruct the Justice Department to explicitly investigate the president's enemies, his opponents, and so on and so forth. Donald Trump has said he wants to appoint a special counsel to investigate Joe Biden. Tim Scott alluded strongly to doing the same in that clip that we saw. They are not themselves advocating for blind justice, but they want blind justice applied in this case.
Well, the interesting thing is, again, none of them protested 2 weeks before the 2020 presidential election when Donald Trump ordered his attorney general to arrest Joe Biden and Joe Biden's family. I mean, nothing ever happened like that before in American history, where a sitting president is behind in the polls and he orders his attorney general to arrest his opponent and his opponent's family. And Jonathan Lemire can't underline it enough. So Wall Street Journal's opinion page said, a lot of smoke here, no fire. We keep hearing about audio tapes. And then we hear there's nothing on audio tapes. Comer keeps, it is, and unfortunately, this term has been overused way too much. Maybe we've even overused it here. But this is straight out of Joe McCarthy's playbook. Yep. This is McCarthyism, where you throw one unsubstantiated charge after another up against the wall. And we can tick through every one. And people who have been harshly critical of the media's response to this even admit when pressed, there are no crimes here. Could there have been unethical behavior? Sure. Should Hunter Biden have flown on Air Force Two when he was going over to China to make a business deal? No. Unethical behavior. You can have a debate about that and then compare that to what Donald Trump did. Compare that to what other presidents did. But again, nobody's come forward with a crime. It is all smoke, no fire, and a hell of a lot of McCarthyism here.
It is Wednesday, the 21st of June of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious is the little Yorkie and our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome, whoever they might be? Priests, ministers, heads of state, subheads of state, subheads of state, whoever they may be. Okay, well, I guess Hunter Biden's going to get the Hillary treatment, huh? Yeah, we all are. We're all going to get the Hillary treatment. No, it doesn't matter, because they'll do what they do because that's what they do. It's amazing that at the same time you got Sam Alito taking out an opinion podcast, I don't know, blog on the Wall Street Journal. Thanks, Rupert. And from a purportedly, well, actually, ProPublica had sent Alito a series of questions, and instead of answering the questions or ignoring it or whatever, he runs to the Wall Street Journal and then makes the rest of us wonder, so, are you saying that you leaked the Dobbs decision, Sam? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. We all knew it, and we all know it now. What a little putz that guy is. God. And what was he trying to refute? That there was anything untoward in any of his behavior? Well, you got Leonard Leo and you got Paul Singer. In other words, the usual suspects. Pretty much putting a chokehold on Lady Liberty. That's right. First they get the presidency, then they get the Congress, and then they get the judiciary. Checkmate. Wow. Got their little ducks in a row, and it took them, through the usual 50-year Soviet year plan. It takes 50 years. They learned well, being those supposed anti-Soviet fighters. Yeah, I don't know. I think they probably sat around and said, you know what? The Soviets have a really cool thing going. What if we made it like more capitalistic? And somebody else stood up and said, you mean like fascism and Nazism? And he says, how dare you? And now they're just saying, hey, like fascism, like Nazism? And they go, yeah, man. We're goose-stepping to a different drama. And apparently we are. So are we going to be good Americans like the good Germans and just take it? Actually, the good Germans weren't just taking it. They embraced it when it all fell down around them. Then they were never a Nazi, just a good German. I wasn't a Nazi, I was a good German. And the people who were, opposed to the prevailing Nazism weren't around anymore. Where'd they go? Yeah, well, they were first taken away, and then they were taken away. All right. So they want to put Hunter Biden's head on a pike. At the same time, Sam Alito is being feted by billionaires who are then appearing before his court where he is not recusing, and he just happens to decide in their favor, and they make a bunch of more billions of bucks. Apparently so they can take him on really cool fishing trips. And then people wonder, why was it that Scalia just sort of like suddenly died on a hunting trip in a hunting lodge with a pillow falling over his face? Yeah, I think it had a little bit more behind it than just falling. Okay. What did Scalia say that he wasn't going to do? That's what I want to know. Do we? Do we have any suspicion? Because that was a rather suspicious demise, we still joke about it. Yep. On the other hand, I always like the National Lampoon approach to all of this, because right now they would be publishing a picture of Sam Alito waving on maybe even a fishing trip with the caption reading, "Hi, I'm still dead." Just like Franco. They did like Franco. Maybe that was the Harvard Lampoon that did that originally. Hi, I'm still dead. Franco. Yeah. Okay, they want to bring Franco back, too. Jeez. I don't know. My buddy, when his dad died, who had fought in the Battle of the Bulge, now, the way he put it is he got shot in the ass. And he said, the way you get shot in the ass in the Battle of the Bulge is that you're running away. But I think he's being a little modest, or was being a little modest, because he's passed now. But there was nowhere to run in the Battle of the Bulge. So anyway, when John's dad died, George, we talked about the generational memory that will be lost because all of our grandparents, our parents and grandparents are passing away. They could tell us how it really was and why we did what we did. And maybe it was up to us to sort of carry on that legacy, which we have been doing. But it's amazing how those powers that be decided, hey, we want to bring back the good old days. Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not really enamored with Nazi uniforms and garter belts in Nazi uniforms. And, I mean, they want to get rid of drag shows. And I'm like, have you ever seen a Nazi drag show? Oh, my God. Some people like that. To each his own. But I don't like that one. So, why don't we give you a rundown of what we have in store for you, since we had a fairly long opening there, because I think that it needed to be said. And it was, hey, since only Republicans and former Republicans can ever proffer an opinion anywhere that has any credence and credibility that anybody and everybody will accept. Because if a Democratic Party member said anything, it's going to be suspect. And everybody knows that because we're so shifty and shifty. That's what we are, apparently. But I thought that needed to be said. And letting Joe say it. Joe Scarborough. Not my favorite, but oh well. There it was. So let us give you a rundown of what we do have in store for you. They're going to keep Benghaziing Hunter and whoever is the I don't know, Goldstein for a day. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and below to Trump's election conspiracy theories, Georgia officials won't take over elections in Fulton County. And they had to go through quite a few, well, not quite a few, but several election cycles to be deemed, it's okay. Trump is wrong. Killer tornadoes clobbered Mississippi, toppling buildings and knocking out power. But it didn't stop Governor Tate Reeves from hightailing it out of state to attend a Republican fundraiser in Alabama. They do that, And reform-minded prosecutors in Northern Virginia won re-election nominations in Democratic primaries. Well, that's some great news. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where French police searched the Paris Olympic organizers' headquarters. The third straight time graft allegations have dogged a Summer Olympics. And saying minerals are needed in a green transition, Norway proposed opening its waters to deep-sea mining. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. So go ahead, chat. Across from that chat room link to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. So do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Do it, please. Please. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. And hey, do it. Become followers of those social media platforms, especially while we're still on Twitter. And then move over to Mastodon and Spoutable. We're there. If you would like to follow me, and I suggest you do, that's how egotistical I am. But there's a reason for that ego, is that I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime. And if you follow me at Justice Putnam on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, that's an easy way to find those show notes and links and then be able to read the real, full, complete articles by the actual reporters doing the reportage, from which we have a little fun and mirth here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You know, you can follow the show on Twitter as well for what it is, at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. Yeah, humble brag this. All right, here we are in the first offering in the Bistro Cafe, and it is brought to us by Jeff Amy, who writes for the Associated Press. Georgia's state election board won't take over running elections in the state's most populous county, ending an investigation that had sparked fears of partisan meddling. The board voted unanimously yesterday, Tuesday, to end its performance review of Fulton County nearly 2 years after it had begun. Multiple board members said they want the county to continue to work on improvements before the 2024 election and not to backslide on work already done. Fulton County officials noted that the review panel found no violations of state law or rules across 9 elections that it monitored. Trump had zeroed in on the county after he lost Georgia by a slim margin in the November 2020 general election. In phone calls to state election officials and in public comments, Trump made unfounded claims of widespread election fraud in Fulton. The board yesterday also voted to dismiss a series of fraud claims relating to the election. They included a claim that poll workers discovered forged ballots printed on different paper and claims that election workers improperly counted suitcases full of ballots. Those suitcases were the normal carrying cases for ballots. Board member Ed Lindsay asked that the board issue letters to former Fulton election workers Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Shea Moss stating the case had been dismissed. Both faced threats after Trump and his supporters falsely accused them of misconduct. Emily Waxter-Pettis of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Mississippi Governor Tater Eves, oh, that's what I like to call him, Tater Eves, but he's actually known as Tate Reeves, traveled to Alabama for a Republican fundraising event as people in his state were still reeling from back-to-back tornadoes that killed one person, injured dozens, and destroyed homes and businesses. and in the midst of lingering power outages from severe thunderstorms. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey and Reeves headlined a Republican Governors Association fundraiser on Monday at the Grand Bohemian Hotel in Birmingham, according to an invitation obtained on Tuesday yesterday by the AP. Ticket prices range from $5,000 for one person and $50,000 for four. Reeves is policy chairperson for the RGA and is seeking a second term as governor this year, and he needs the money more than he needs to show a little bit of, political restraint. His campaign manager, Elliot Husbands, said in response to questions yesterday, Tuesday, that the event was planned long ago and money raised there was not earmarked for any specific campaign. Wink, wink. Kentucky, Louisiana, and Mississippi have the only governor's races this year. Meanwhile, thousands of people have been sweating without air conditioning since severe thunderstorms knocked out electrical service last week in central Mississippi. A tornado that struck Jasper County in eastern Mississippi overnight on Sunday to Monday killed one person, injured nearly 24, and damaged more than 70 homes. And then later on Monday, another tornado struck coastal Jackson County. It injured 6 people and damaged about 100 structures. Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 3 incumbent prosecutors in Northern Virginia who faced tough challenges after being elected 4 years ago on a progressive reform agenda won their Democratic primaries yesterday, Tuesday. In Fairfax County, the state's most populous jurisdiction, incumbent Steve Toscano defeated Ed Nuttall, a former prosecutor and trial attorney who is best known for representing police officers accused of misconduct. Toscano, in a phone interview, said the results in his race and in the other 2 counties show that voters have seen that criminal justice reform can work, and quite frankly, they want more of it. He said that while reform opponents have tried to raise fears about rising crime, Tuesday's results show that voters feel safe, they know they're safe, and they know they can have safety, fairness, justice, and equality. Buddha Bubaraj, the Commonwealth's attorney in Loudoun County, won over challenger Elizabeth Lancaster after raising significantly more money. Bibaraj faced criticism, including some within her own party, over her day-to-day management of the office, and as Loudoun found itself in the national spotlight over issues like school safety. She also faced criticism in her handling of 2 sex assaults at 2 different high schools in 2021. In November, Bibaraj will face Republican Bob Anderson, who held the Commonwealth's attorney's post in Loudoun for more than 20 years. And in Arlington County, incumbent Parisa Dagani Tafti defeated challenger Josh Katcher, who had been one of Dagani Tafti's deputies before leaving the office. Dagani Tafti, I'm sorry about butchering the name, but Dagani Tafti is overwhelmingly favored in heavily Democratic Arlington County in November. Descano, Biberaj, and Dagani Tafti were all elected 4 years ago in the wealthy Northern Virginia suburbs outside the nation's capital on progressive reform agendas, and in some cases, knocking off incumbents who'd been in office for decades. This year, the challengers themselves largely embraced reform efforts and focused their criticism instead on issues of office management. Well. That brings us to our break, and why don't we do that? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, just keep telling yourself it's the 14th highest grossing franchise ever. By and large, the cartoons of the 80s never claimed to be highbrow entertainment. Instead, they were all about fun, action, and in the case of the Transformers, above all, about selling toys for Hasbro. Much like earlier installments in the classic 80s animated movie, Transformers Rise of the Beasts continues the plot from 2019's Bumblebee, with characters that originated on the TV show, plus some new ones. After stealing a Porsche that turns out to be a Transformer, young Brooklyn native and military tech wizard Noah is recruited along with museum worker Elena by Earth-based Autobots to help retrieve a mysterious so-called transwarp key that could send the robots back to Cybertron, the world from which they were forced to evacuate by the planet-eating god Unicron. A more nuanced plot than you might expect unfolds as the competing interests of the protagonists work out. The action scenes are suitably impressive for a $200 million action film in 2023, as is the voice talent for the bots, including Michelle Yeoh, Pete Davidson, Ron Perlman, Peter Dinklage, and even Peter Cullen, the original Optimus Prime. Nostalgia is enhanced with lots of 90s references and an impressive classic hip-hop soundtrack, which is meant to appeal to the kids who grew up on the cartoon and are now middle-aged. And for the most part, it works. Transformers Rise of the Beast is, overall, a fun movie with some gripping sequences and exotic shooting locations, including no less than Machu Picchu. The bar for a film in this franchise isn't high, but in addition to a great look, Michael Bay and company actually succeed in making you feel something for alien robots. And that's saying something. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Donna Phillips. Today we continue our series on principles of the Constitution as part of our Civil Discourse and American Legacy project. We are joined by special guest Dr. Lester Brooks, American History Professor Emeritus from Anne Arundel Community College. Welcome, Dr. Brooks.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Brooks, what type of government was produced at the Philadelphia Convention?
What we have, certainly the Founding Fathers and the delegates at the Philadelphia Convention had wrestled with forms of government, particularly James Madison, who had studied before the Philadelphia Convention, studied various governments. They had served under a monarchy, and they understood that there was a monarchy, there was an aristocracy, there was a democracy. But more and more, the Founding Fathers were thinking about the people having a voice. And so what they came up with was a Republican form of government at Philadelphia, where the people would have a voice in their own government through their representatives. In Federalist Number 10, part of the Federalist Papers, and this was written by James Madison, a co-author of the Federalist Papers, he gives us a definition, and he explains a Republican form of government that was established at Philadelphia, where the people rule through their representatives, and a pure democracy where the people rule directly. And he says that the Philadelphia Convention, its Republican form, was the best form to reduce the harmful effects of factions.
Why did George Floyd die? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. One answer, because former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who's white, pressed his knee into George Floyd's neck, Floyd is black, for 9.5 minutes and suffocated him. Other officers assisted or did nothing to stop Chauvin, who is now in prison for murder. There's another answer. 60% of the time that Minneapolis cops have used force, it's against black residents, although black residents make up only 20% of the city's population. And city police officers have stopped black drivers 6.5 times more often than white drivers, and then disproportionately and inappropriately searched and handcuffed them. And the police have often used excessive force, including against persons who committed a petty offense or no offense at all. And also, they've shot at people without determining if there was an immediate threat, and regularly discriminated against Native Americans as well as black residents. These facts are set forth in a recent DOJ report, which will result in a consent decree with the city to institute police reforms. Attorney General Merrick Garland said that there were many Minneapolis police officers who did their job with professionalism, courage, and respect, but the report makes clear how intolerable behavior by police was tolerated and condoned. As the Attorney General said, the patterns and practices of the police department made what happened to George Floyd possible. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Molly.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time. It's Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low to mid 80s. And we'll have plenty of sun throughout the day, and winds will be out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight, lows in the low to mid-50s. Winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then some sunshine and some clouds tomorrow with a stray shower or thunderstorm. And highs will be around 90, winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen remains very high here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 15 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains very high at level 9. Take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.16 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 78 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 82 and sunny. Rome is 92 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 82 and fair. Kabul is 81 and clear. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 71 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 and fair, and New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Charlton and Graham Dunbar of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. French police searched the Paris Olympic organizers' headquarters yesterday, Tuesday, as part of corruption investigations into contracts linked to the Games, according to prosecutors. The third straight time graft allegations have dogged a Summer Olympics. The Paris Organizing Committee said in a statement that a search was carried out at its headquarters in the suburb of Saint-Denis, and it was cooperating with investigators. It defended what it called stringent procedures around several hundred contracts it has awarded for the games. I'll just give you a little bit of background here. Saint-Denis has a, shall we say, long-held and vivid reputation for being quite linked up with, how shall I put it, the underworld. So it's appropriate the Paris Organizing Committee's headquarters would be in Saint-Denis. I'm just saying. Tuesday's search and other related raids were linked to two preliminary investigations into the Paris Olympics, according to an official with the Financial Prosecutor's Office, who of course was not authorized to publicly be named according to office policy. One probe was opened in 2017, the year Paris was picked by the ICC, the International Olympic Committee, as the 2024 host, and the other began last year. Neither investigation has been made public until yesterday, Tuesday. Corruption allegations have hung over the world's biggest sporting event many times, from accusations surrounding how the games were awarded to how contracts for construction, sponsorship, and team services were handed out, let alone getting rid of as many people to make way for the Olympics, no matter how destitute, infirmed, or old they may be.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Norway said yesterday, Tuesday, it wants to open parts of the Norwegian continental shelf for commercial deep-sea mining in line with the country's strategy to seek new economic opportunities and reduce its reliance on the oil and gas industry. Terje Aasland, Norway's Minister for Petroleum and Energy, said in a statement, the country needs minerals to help transition to a more green economy. The Norwegian seabed is reportedly rich with minerals including copper, zinc, manganese, and cobalt. Currently, the sources are controlled Currently, the resources are controlled by a few countries, which makes us vulnerable, he said, but the Norwegian government's plan is controversial, to say the least, and environmental groups are warning that mining the seabed would threaten the biodiversity of the valuable ecosystems in the area. Louisa Casson, global project leader for Greenpeace's Stop Deep Sea Mining campaign, said that to forge ahead and unleash deep sea mining in the Arctic would be criminal. Norway talks about leading the world, but they clearly didn't get the memo of the growing opposition to this industry, she said in a statement. Norway, one of the world's wealthiest countries due to its vast oil and gas reserves, has significant mineral resources on the seabed, and their extraction could become a new and important industry for the country, the Petroleum and Industry Minister said. If proven to be profitable, and if extraction can be done sustainably, seabed mineral activities can strengthen the economy, including employment in Norway, while ensuring the supply of crucial metals for the world's transition to sustainable energy, the ministry said. Norway's move comes a month before a meeting of the International Seabed Authority in Kingston, Jamaica. that will address the thorny issue of whether there should be industrial-scale extraction of valuable minerals from the depths of the ocean. Yeah, let's go mining for zinc. That won't cause any problems. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.